Okay, so hello everybody. I am totally alone today in the kitchen because my husband, who has been working this entire time, had to go to work on a Sunday today. He works for the news. News is essential, so he's still going in every couple of days. But that means that I'm on my own and anything can happen. I have already hit myself in the head with my light because it's in the sink right now, because that's the only place I could put it where I could get this shot and make it practical. It's a mess. So it might be a very exciting show. Who knows? We're going to be talking about cutting dairy out of your cooking, dairy-free cooking. It was another request I had from viewers, so thank you guys for giving me ideas. I'm happy to try to take on anything you suggest. It also means that I can see anyone who comes in to watch this, and right now I'm broadcasting to no one, so that's awesome. It also means that I can see myself, which is going to drive me crazy, because I'm one of those people who on Zoom is always like fixing their hair and hating what my bangs are doing right now, so I'm going to try and not do that. So thank you for coming, Amanda. Oh, Alex is here, so my husband is here in spirit. Lola is out just in case we need her commentary. She usually doesn't disappoint, and she's my backup camera woman right now. But she's down the hallway, so she's not doing a very good job right now. Okay, dairy-free cooking. I'm gonna do a little bit of the dietitian stuff about dairy and why you might want to cut it out of your diet. There's usually three main reasons. Reason number one is lactose intolerance. That is a really, really common issue. More people in this world have lactose intolerance than don't. It doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you. It just kind of means that as we go from a baby to an adult, we stop being able to digest milk. When we're kids, when we're babies, infants, and we're feeding on milk, our bodies naturally make an enzyme that breaks down lactose. When we become adults, we don't need to drink milk as our main meal 3 times a day. So our body's like, why am I still making this enzyme? Bodies like to be efficient, so they get rid of it, and then we can't digest it. What is lactose? Lactose is a sugar. It is actually in the same family as glucose and sucrose, which is white sugar. Lactose is the sugar that's naturally found in milk. It's not added to milk. We don't have milk with sugar that's been poured in the processing. But it is a unique sugar combination to dairy products, and it has a requirement of a specific enzyme to break it apart. So if you're out there and you're like, I'm not lactose intolerant, what's the big deal? That is because certain people from usually, I think, Eastern Europe, sometimes Western Europe, they have communities, histories that kind of evolved to live with dairy cows or goats or sheep. So there were more milk consumption there. And some of us are genetically more predisposed for our bodies to keep making that enzyme through adulthood. Other places, a lot of Asia, most of Asia and Africa, not big milk drinkers, not big cow farmers. So they don't have that enzyme, and that's okay. That's normal. Again, like I said, most people don't digest milk very well. We just happen to love milk in this country, and we have the dairy lobby, who I've talked about before, because they created the food pyramid, and they pretty much got their hands on all publication of nutrition from the 1950s onward, and decided that they were just going to insert themselves and dictate what was going to be important. So milk has been pushed as important. And I don't want to bash the dairy lobby. Milk has its place. It can be healthy. We don't need it. That is the most important thing. You can live your entire life without having a dairy product. You'll still get your calcium as long as your diet is balanced, because calcium is in a lot of things. Dairy just happens to be one of them. If you eat green vegetables, calcium is in that. If you eat shellfish, calcium is in that. If you eat regular fish, calcium is in that. And calcium is in trace amounts in different fruits, vegetables. That's all over the place. So like I said, you balance your diet out right, you don't need milk. So that's reason number one, people might be going dairy-free in their diet. Reason number two is allergy. Milk allergy is different than lactose intolerance. Lactose intolerance basically means you can't digest it, but it's not going to make you react with an immune response. If you have lactose intolerance, you get a stomach ache, or you have to go run to the bathroom, or something within that spectrum. Everyone's different, so not everybody's going to react the same way. But it's usually something in the gut that feels uncomfortable. Dairy allergy is you have an immune response when you eat dairy. I'm a super lucky person because I'm not lactose intolerant because of all that really good Eastern European stock, but I am allergic to milk, which is not fun. And I'm also really stubborn, so I keep eating cheese because I love it. Big difference between lactose intolerance and dairy allergy. A lot of cheese actually is incredibly low lactose, so unless you're super sensitive, you can have most cheese. The reason being that when you make cheese, if it's aged, like if you have to put it in a cave and let it ripen a little bit, or it grows that moldy exterior rind, or is a hard cheese like basic stuff, cheddar, Havarti, Munster, that stuff. Those are all aged cheeses, and we use bacteria in cheese making, and the bacteria's favorite food is lactose because it's sugar. So when cheese is made, if it's a hard cheese that has to sit around for a bit and some bacteria is added to give it some flavor, that cheese is really low lactose, if any, and most lactose intolerant people can tolerate it. So if you want to eat your cheese and you're lactose intolerant, go right ahead. Dairy allergy, you can't eat anything with dairy, period. For me, what that means is it has, over the years, given me a lot of skin reactions. I get eczema if I eat a bunch of dairy, or just have it in my diet regularly. Or I get a super histamine reaction, so I'll chomp into it, and basically within the next 10 minutes, I end up with like a completely stuffed up nose and I can't breathe. And that'll go on for a couple of hours and then it goes away, or I'll go to sleep and wake up and am completely congested. So that's what a dairy allergy looks like. It has nothing to do with the gut, really. You can have both. You can have an allergy and lactose intolerance. When I avoid dairy, I end up with a little mild lactose intolerance because I stop eating it and my body's like, well, we don't have to make that enzyme anymore. So they go kind of hand in hand. But you can still kind of enjoy dairy if in some forms if you have lactose intolerance. I've had people tell me they could eat ice cream. I've had other people tell me they can't eat ice cream. It'll make them very sick. So your mileage may vary. And there are some people who can force a tolerance when they are intolerant over time. If you just keep eating it and keep eating it and keep eating it, sometimes your body kicks in like mine does and starts making the enzyme again. That's not everybody. I don't recommend that route if you are not sure if that's you, because you can just be making yourself miserable and have indigestion for weeks on end. There's no rhyme or reason. Trust your body. Listen to what it's telling you. If you're lactose intolerant, it's probably best to get that stuff out of your diet. Or you can take Lactaid, which is store-bought enzymes that you can put in your body. Or you can buy Lactaid milk, which is the milk with the same sugars in it, but they've already been broken down because they add an enzyme to it to break that down. So it's kind of pre-digested, which sounds gross, but those are all options if you are dying to get milk. So that's the two main reasons people like to cut out dairy. The third, and it's not any less important, is veganism. Vegans do not eat dairy or any other animal product. So a lot of these tips and tricks that I'm going to talk about today, I've learned from having vegan friends and having this allergy and been like, what do I do? And having my vegan friends be like, you should try this brand of cheese. It's awesome. And then really building up my own likes. A lot of when you're switching out dairy for alternatives happens with taste, because there's currently kind of a renaissance of things available that don't contain dairy. It's just kind of a preference at this point. So with that in mind, let's get into what you can do. So when people said dairy-free cooking, I had one friend suggest dairy-free empanadas. I don't know how to make empanadas. I could look it up and go over it, but I do know they're usually fried, so that didn't really seem like the best idea. And then I had another person just say dairy-free cooking, which can be kind of a spectrum because there's baking and then there's cooking. Dairy-free baking can be a little more technical because baking is technical. There's a lot that goes into it. So I'm kind of going to give some general guidelines for switching out dairy in your diet that don't always include baking, but they can be applied to baking. So let's go down the list. Let's start with milk. Replacing milk in cooking is pretty easy because there is 15 different types of non-dairy milks out there now. Currently the dairy lobby, because they always kind of get uptight about threats to their market, is trying to sue people for not calling it milk anymore. But when I say non-dairy milk, I don't mean things from animals, I mean things from plants. One of the most popular ones, almond milk. And before anyone gets into it, I know this stuff is bad for the environment. Almond farming is not great. I love almond milk. So your mileage may vary, your ethics may vary with this stuff. I happen to have it in the fridge. I have been kind of branching out lately to try to find something. I happen to like almond milk because to me, the taste and the texture is perfection for alternative milk variety. You can get non-dairy milks sweetened or unsweetened. You can get them vanilla flavored. You can get them chocolate flavored. They come in a rainbow of colors. I'm pretty sure I've seen strawberry out there too. And almond is not your only choice, nor is soy. If you were tuned in for the vegan protein, plant-based protein talk I did, I talked about how there's a lot of soy in our diet already, so I don't always recommend eating a ton of soy. But if you want to try soy milk, there's nothing wrong with that. Just watch what other stuff is going in your diet and watch how often you're having soy. If you're having soy every single day, that might be something you need to kind of revisit to break it up a little bit. Less soy in the diet so there's less inflammation. Because soy in large quantities will cause inflammation, and soy is in so much of our food. Processed foods, restaurant foods, because soy oil, which is also called vegetable oil, is the most commonly cheaply used oil out there. So if you are avoiding soy milk might not be the best thing for you. I also personally don't like soy milk because it's got a weird texture. Some people love it. And again, if you love it, stick with what you love. Because the point here is you liking it and wanting to eat it. So these are my personal preferences. But soy milk is an option. There's also cashew milk. I found that things made with cashew milk are actually really creamy. Cashew ice cream is like the bomb. The most creamy ice cream I've ever had was made with cashews. You can also try coconut milk. Again, personal preference. I didn't like coconut milk as much because it's got a weird aftertaste to me. But again, not the end of the world. And is another option. And some people love it. So, and coconut milk, you can buy it in the store in a carton. You can buy it in a can. It's used in a lot of Southeast Asian cooking. Very common, very creamy. They make cream out of it as well. And I've also seen Ready Whip started making a spray can of coconut whipped cream. So it's very high fat content, makes it a very naturally creamy thing to use, and you can pretty much apply it to savory, sweet, whatever your creamy needs are. We're going to get into that in a minute. There's also hazelnut and peanut and hemp and oat milk, and everybody has the one that they like, and none of them are really bad. All of them have some degree of protein. Soy has the most protein, but it's not without protein in the other milks. And you can pretty much shop around and see what you like. I really like Elmhurst because they have like 6 or 7 different types of non-dairy milks available, and they just keep coming out with different ones. So that's my favorite brand right now. They also don't add a lot of stuff to them. You can also use Silk. I actually like Silk a lot. One note, and that is on carrageenan. There are a lot of rumors going around for a while that carrageenan is carcinogenic. That was because they did one study with rats where they fed the rats basically a diet of carrageenan for their entire lives. The reason why we use rats in studies, by the way, is because they are genetically, oddly enough, very similar to humans. But the way we do studies with animals is always really convoluted that I don't even know why. We wouldn't sit down and eat a pile of carrageenan 3 times a day for the rest of our lives. So anything in excess like that is going to be bad for you. I admit that I actually fell for the carrageenan myth for a while and was telling people don't drink it. But if you happen to see that in a non-dairy milk, it's an emulsifier, which means it makes the fat blend with the water, because fat doesn't like water usually. They like to separate, if you've ever seen oil and water or vinaigrette or things like that. Carrageenan helps kind of make everything uniform. So that's why it's in there, and you don't have to worry about it because you're not consuming carrageenan for the rest of your life. So just that note. Any recipe that calls for milk, you can use non-dairy milk. Make sure it's unsweetened unless it is a sweet recipe. So you don't want to be making mac and cheese that is instant and requires milk with like a vanilla almond milk. That's not going to work out in your favor unless you happen to like that. And if you happen to like that, that's cool. I'm not going to judge you. All right. So yeah, you can just switch out non-dairy milk for milk. It's really simple. You don't have to do anything special there. Butter. Moving on to that. Butter is another dairy product, also made from milk. For butter, for the consistency, I actually really, really recommend coconut oil. So you can kind of see in here, it's real solid in there right now. So it's probably, yeah, it's not moving. It's probably about 65, 70 degrees in here. The reason why coconut oil is an awesome substitute for butter is because it's solid at room temperature, just like butter is. It melts at high temperatures, so in the dead of summer when it's like 80 degrees, 90 degrees, that stuff becomes liquefied. I can't do anything about it. But if I stuck it in the fridge, it would become solid again. That mimics animal fat. Animal fat is saturated fat. It is solid at room temperature, and it melts at high temperatures. Coconut oil is not saturated fat, so people are nuts about it. That's one of the reasons. You can use it in any butter substitute. I will warn you, it's not sweetened, but every time I have cooked with coconut oil, it tastes like coconut. It doesn't matter. My eggs tasted like coconut. My pie tasted like coconut. But it is versatile for using in things like butter. I tend to only reserve it for stuff when I'm baking because of that slight coconut flavor that comes out. I have made a pie crust with coconut oil. It wasn't the worst thing in the world, but I think I used way too much because I was trying to adapt a not vegan pie crust, and it was calling for shortening in butter, and I just threw in equivalent amounts of coconut oil. Probably didn't need that much, so it was a little greasy. So if you are adapting a recipe, maybe don't follow it to the letter with corresponding amounts. You might want to look at what does this call for in terms of coconut oil, or just Google, like, if I'm substituting coconut oil, how much do I use instead of butter? So that's only one warning, but coconut oil is a really, really good substitute for all your butter needs. The one I use, because I avoid butter, is olive oil. We have talked about this before. Olive oil has kind of a low smoking point, so a lot of people don't like to use it for cooking. Smoking point meaning that if you are cooking something at a high temperature, it is literally going to go up in smoke because it's kind of burning a little bit. If that is the case and you're using high temperature cooking, I recommend something like grape seed oil or canola oil. Those are okay. I like olive oil because it is an anti-inflammatory. I do a lot of quick sautés where there's not a lot of long-term cooking going on, and olive oil is always my oil of choice for cooking with that. So I've been doing that for years. I haven't needed butter at all, which is probably really good because it is a very high saturated fat food. Note about saturated fats: they're not the devil. They're not going to kill you, but you shouldn't make ton of your diet in. And if you are eating red meat, you might want to consider cutting saturated fat out in other directions like butter. So even if you're not dairy free, that's helpful. So covered butter, cream. I mentioned coconut cream. Coconut cream is usually, it's not, I wouldn't say savory, it's not like salty or anything like that, but it has a pretty neutral flavor, but it is rich and creamy, and it makes things rich and creamy. You can add it to bisques that you're making. You can use it, Southeast Asian cooking uses it in curries, and it's awesome. It's like my favorite thing in the world. You can also use coconut cream in a sweet capacity. They make it now with a little bit of sugar added in the store, so if you want a coffee creamer, you can get coconut creamer. It is high in fat. Coconut cream has, like I said, it's not saturated fat. It is called, what is the, medium chain triglycerides. If anyone who is keto is watching this, I am so sorry I'm murdering this. I don't listen a lot to the medium chain triglyceride stuff because it is a little overly saturated in keto culture, and people think it's the best thing in the world and it's gonna like cure all your fat burning needs and cure all the diseases in your body. Coconut oil doesn't do all that. It will kind of provide you with a little bit of easy to burn energy. Your body likes to burn the fat in coconut oil more than it likes to burn other types of fat. So it might store other types of fat away, whereas it'll use coconut oil first for energy. So it's actually, people are really excited about it because of that, because you can eat something that's high fat and your body uses it as energy efficiently instead of putting it here. So, that's why a lot of keto and paleo people love coconut oil. If you are eating a metric ton of coconut oil, it's not going to do anything good for your health. It's not going to do anything bad for your health. It's just going to give you lots of calories in your diet. And most people who are looking out for their health and their weight don't need extra calories in their diet. So people got it under in their heads, basically, that if you add this stuff to your coffee or lump it on to meals where you've already made the meal and you're just adding extra fat to it, it'll do something. No, it's adding extra calories. So don't go crazy over coconut oil, but it is good for certain reasons. So if you are substituting it for oils that you would use usually, it's a really healthy thing to have going in your meals. So that's my spiel on coconut oil. All right, other things that you can use instead of cream. If you are making a creamy soup, you can add potato to it. Keep in mind potatoes are starches, so they will add some calories to your meal. You can also use parsnips, which are higher in fiber, but they make a very, very creamy texture. I just made a parsnip soup this past week, and it was awesome, and I didn't use anything except for broth and the vegetables, and that was it. And it was like eating a thick bisque. So certain vegetables do make things creamier. If you are doing a smoothie and you want it to be extra creamy, avocado is actually a really good thing to add. It has a neutral flavor. It is a high-fat vegetable that also has other nutrients. It will make your smoothies very, very creamy. You can also add a nut butter, like peanut butter, almond butter. That will make it creamy as well. So you can get creamy textures without ever touching dairy. They also make a metric ton right now of non-dairy yogurt. So if you're really, really missing yogurt or the texture that brings, you can use that. I've also seen people substitute vegan yogurt for sour cream. You have to obviously get the plain, because if you're adding vanilla vegan yogurt to a savory thing, it's not going to taste very good. But those are all options. If you need sour cream in a recipe, vegan yogurt is probably the best option, because sour cream, especially for baking, adds a lot of moisture as well as a velvety texture. So you're going to want that moisture in the form of plain yogurt. All right, so that brings us to cheese, which is my favorite addiction. I love cheese. I eat way too much of it, especially for someone who has a dairy allergy. I can't stop myself sometimes. It's awesome. It's my favorite food. But I have found some vegan alternatives that really work well and help me cut down so I'm not killing myself all the time. All right. This is my favorite brand. Daiya. So I like Daiya because they started making these cheese slices, and they make them in so many good flavors. This is provolone. I'm starving. I'm going to take a bite. Provolone. This stuff is awesome on sandwiches. If you love cheese, talking with my mouth full, I'm sorry. I also happen to have smoked Gouda. It tastes exactly like smoked Gouda. I also love Daiya, aside from the texture and the taste. They don't make their products with soy. They make it with pea protein, I believe, and taro root and some other, maybe tapioca. I've seen all of those things in there, but none of that is soy, and I don't have to worry about eating too much soy when I'm eating their products. A lot of people use Daiya to use melty products. They make shredded cheese too. I personally am not a fan of melted Daiya cheese. It does not taste right to me. It gets a little too liquidy. The texture's wrong. Other people really like it, and they make American slices, which you can just make grilled cheese in your microwave with, basically, or on a stove or on a grill, like it's supposed to be. I'm lazy and I use a microwave, so there's that. But yeah, Daiya cheese is awesome. I highly recommend them. But you can shop around. You can find other brands that might work for you. I've had clients be like, hey, have you heard of this? And I'm like, no. And they're like, it's the best thing ever. So what's kind of great is the technology for fake food is really, really developing as the demand has been getting larger and larger and larger. So you don't have to use Daiya. Try stuff that's out there. I just highly recommend that. So that's what I usually use for like sandwiches. If I really want a sandwich with some cheese on it, I will go for those slices. Then, here's my other favorite thing ever, nutritional yeast. I happen to have 2 nutritional yeast things because I'm a maniac. I love this stuff so much. When I see it, I just buy it because I kind of want to hoard it because it's not always available. I've found it in Whole Foods. I've found it in my local West Side grocery. I found it in Garden of Eden. You can probably find it in your local grocery. I won't guarantee that, but it is pretty widely available these days. I've usually found it in the baking section. It's not used for baking. It is not that kind of yeast. It is a different species of yeast. Don't go eating yeast that you use to bake. It is not going to taste good. It's going to taste kind of like beer a little bit and bread, but not in a good way. Nutritional yeast is a different species, like I said. There's a lot of different types of yeast out there. And I get it. Eating yeast sounds really gross. It's not. It's actually, this stuff is just addictive to me. It tastes like Parmesan cheese. This is why I bring this up in the cheese section. This stuff is just 100% that kind of cheesy Parmesan-y flavor. It looks like it too, which is helpful for the eye because eating things that are appealing visual really, really is important too. So nutritional yeast has a ton of vitamins in it. It is like one of the healthiest things you can use. So for a cheese alternative, it's actually pretty exciting for that reason. They say a serving size is 1/4 cup, which is a lot. I don't think I ever use that much, but in 1/4 cup of this stuff, you get 1,000% of your B12 needs. So if you are B12 deficient in any way, you can just start eating this stuff in a bunch of your meals and it will help bring up your levels. It's also got folate and a bunch of other B vitamins. But the B12 is really exciting for people who might not be eating meat or any other animal products because B12 is mostly in eggs, cheese, meats, and fish. Now, on the spectrum of how much B12 is in something, nutritional yeast is at the top just below fish and shellfish. So it is awesome for getting a nice vitamin boost to your diet. It's also just tasty and it tastes a lot like Parmesan. I'm really grateful for it. I've put it on spaghetti. I've put it in like pasta fajoule I made or escarole soup. I'm going to put it on popcorn today and show you how to make a nice snack that tastes like cheesy Parmesan popcorn, but it's actually good for you and is like kind of taking your vitamins, but in a way that tastes delicious. So I can't say enough good things about nutritional yeast. Vegans, if you're watching, it is not your only source of B12. You can also get B12 from nori, which is toasted seaweed. It's the stuff used in sushi. And you can buy nori by itself if you want to just eat that up. It's basically a nice green vegetable that's been toasted and crispy. So that's a really good snack for B12 too. But I'm getting away from the dairy, so let's swing on back to that. So this stuff kind of works for most situations. You would use like a dry grated Parmesan. But it doesn't work in every situation. I have used this in pesto and it kind of flavors it well. Not very strong. It also doesn't melt. It is dry, flaky. So if you need something that's more melty or is going to melt into a cheese sauce, I have other solutions for that. So you can do A vegan ricotta, and you can make it yourself. You can also buy it. Vegan ricotta is available out there, but you can also make like kind of a basic. It's called cashew cheese, and it's not that hard to make. Basically, you just need a food processor. If you take all of your cashews, you just soak them for a bit. Pour a little hot water on it. Let it soak for I don't know, half an hour, an hour. Add it to a food processor. Then you add things that will flavor it. So lemon juice is usually a big one. Salt and pepper. You can add garlic. We're going to get to cheese sauce in a second. There'll be more things that go in that. But for a very basic cashew cheese ricotta, I'd do a little lemon juice, a little bit of fresh garlic, or a little bit, like a quarter of a teaspoon of garlic powder if that's your jam. And then you pulse it. And then you just kind of drizzle a little water as you let the food processor go. It'll start to get like a consistency of hummus. So that's basically your universal cashew cheese, and you can use that in any recipe that calls for farmer's cheese or for ricotta. So for my one friend who requested non-dairy empanadas, if you are using a cheese in there, then that would be, instead of cotija, what you can use in your empanadas. If you want like a down and dirty yellow cheese sauce, like nacho cheese sauce or mac and cheese, you can also use the same technique to make that, actually. It just requires a couple more spices. You can put turmeric, which makes it yellow. You also want to put a little paprika in there. And then you're going to add Dijon mustard. I talked about this last week in salad dressings, but mustard is super creamy. So if you love creamy salad dressings, Dijon mustard is the way to go. You don't have to add any dairy to it. It's going to just smooth everything out, give it a really nice mouth texture. Mustard is awesome for that. But when you're making vegan cheese sauce, you add a little bit of Dijon mustard to it for flavor and for texture as well. Again, you're soaking the cashews. You can actually soak them overnight for this if you want. You're going to make a much thinner sauce than the other recipe, so it might require a little bit more of that soaking just to get everything really, really swelled and wet. Then you put everything in the food processor again. You add a little water, make it thin out. It's going to turn like a bright yellow-orange, which is what we want. And that's your cheese sauce. You can mix that into mac and cheese. It tastes awesome. It's not going to taste like Kraft mac and cheese. That is kind of, it's not possible to replicate that, but it will taste pretty good. I forgot the most important ingredient here is you always add some nutritional yeast. That's going to help with the flavor. The cashews kind of provide the texture and the body of these vegan homemade cheeses. You do add this stuff to give it some more of that cheesy flavor, because nutritional yeast tastes like Parmesan, like I said, so it's going to really help bring out that flavor. So in both recipes, both the cashew ricotta and the cashew cheese sauce I just brought up, it's cashews, nutritional yeast, the spices we talked about. If you want it lemony, add lemon juice, garlicky, add garlic, and then add turmeric if you want it to be yellow or orangey. Paprika is really good for making that orangey cheese sauce and boosting up the flavor, and then Dijon mustard. So, and a little salt and pepper. That's everything that goes into homemade vegan cheeses. They're really easy because you literally throw everything in a food processor and press go, and it's good to go. There's no crazy cooking that's involved, and it's good for you and it tastes good. So, if you are someone who likes to sit there eating cheese dip all the time and just dipping stuff in there, this is a really good way to do that without getting all the high calories that are in cheese dips and things like that. So those are the good cooking alternatives that I kind of came up with. Like I said, they're pretty broad. If you're getting into like, how do I cook like a vegan cake? Some of my techniques are applicable to that. Not all of them are. I would find a vegan cake recipe and do that. Please take note, because this is always my warning. A lot of people think that non-dairy, fat-free versions of desserts or alternating sugar with Splenda and things like that are healthy desserts. You're still going to get the same amount of calories in the end, no matter what. A cake requires fat, so whether that fat comes from coconut or butter, it's still going to be calories. A cake requires some sort of sweetener. You can cut that down, yes, but it also requires flour most of the time, unless you're doing a flourless cake. That's going to have a lot of calories. So, and those are carbs. So even if you're cutting sugar out of a dessert, you're still getting the carbs from somewhere else. So I don't usually like to go into how to substitute a baking thing and use applesauce and beans and things like that, because no matter what, a dessert is a dessert. It's still going to be additional calories to your meal. If you're going to really indulge, just indulge. If you're going to do a vegan cake, just follow the recipe. There's no real healthy way to do cake. So just, if you want to have cake, enjoy your cake. If you want to eat healthy, enjoy your cake like once every couple of months, and that way you're not worrying so much about the calories going into your diet. So that's just my warning. Today's recipe. I'm making popcorn. I thought about making the cashew cheese, but I feel like everybody's kind of a little over-complicated recipe. And I said it wasn't complicated, but like there's a lot that goes into that. This is the easiest thing, and it's a snack. And I feel like we all need a snack right now. Because it's been a long time and we're in quarantine, and so fuck it, we're doing a snack. I make my own popcorn. I don't do the bag stuff, and the reason I don't do the bag stuff is the stuff they use to flavor it is really gross. It's usually some sort of really interesting organic chemistry experiment. I do know that popcorn butter is made of butadiene, which is a derivative of butane, which doesn't make it bad. It's just like, why? It's gross. We don't need it. And it's also very high calorie. You can make a lower calorie, healthy, and non-dairy substitute here. So the first thing you need to do, get yourself some loose corn kernels. That is what I make my popcorn of. What's really, really nice about making your own is you can make a very appropriate amount. So 120 calories for this many kernels. I can't really tilt it that much, but there you go. This is actually, it doesn't seem like a lot. This is a lot. I don't usually make this much popcorn for myself, so I'm just doing it today to show you that there's only 120 calories in this. I usually make about half of this much, and I use my really, really smallest pan, which is like this big around, and just kind of lightly cover half the bottom, and it still usually pops up the lid above where it started. So you start with your popcorn in the pan, and then you add a fat. So we're doing non-dairy. I actually pop my popcorn in olive oil. I like the texture at the end. It almost reminds me a little of butter, and you'll see me add a little more olive oil when we're done. So you put everything in the pan. Please cover your pan. If you don't cover your pan, the popcorn will fly out of your pan, and then you will have a stage show, but you won't have a snack. So make sure you cover your pan. Now, this is a pretty no-brainer recipe here. I've actually put the lid on and I've just walked away. You don't have to sit there and shake it. If I'm making a huge amount of popcorn, I'll sit there and shake the pan a little bit just to make sure nothing's burning, but it goes fast and you really don't have to do much of anything. So you put your oil in. For people who like measurements, I would say probably 2 tablespoons. I eyeball it. It doesn't have to be an exact science, just enough that nothing is sticking. Then once it's all popped, we're just going to add it to our bowl. And then you add what you want to flavor it with. So I'm going to shake a bunch of this nutritional yeast on top. And then I'm going to put some salt. And that's my salty snack. There are 4 grams of protein in popcorn, and there are 6 grams of fiber in this 1/4 cup. I like snacks like popcorn because of this. I usually recommend snacks that are high protein, high fiber, because both of those things make you full, and both of those things will make it so you're not willing to overeat this stuff. It is hard to overeat a bunch of popcorn because you start to feel it sitting in your stomach. So high protein, high fiber. Other examples of that are an apple, which is high fiber, especially if you leave the skin on, with a little, like a tablespoon of peanut butter or almond butter, which is high protein and high fat. That'll keep you full. It's satisfying. It's sweet. It's not a dessert that's going to add sugar and flour and things like that. So those are the kind of snacks I like to recommend, things that'll leave you feeling like you actually ate something and not like, oh, I could eat like 20 more of those in about 20 minutes. That's how we overeat things. A word for snacking while we are all stuck at home. Everybody is over snacking a little bit, and that's okay. I am too. There's nothing that makes you a bad person for that, but it can become a kind of a not great habit. So if you are feeling like you're eating too many snacks, I've been recommending get on a snack schedule. Most people when they work are like, they hit kind of a low during the day. It either is usually in the morning because they didn't eat enough breakfast, or it's in the afternoon. So I tell people, when were you snacking? And when they tell me, I say, okay, that's when you're going to snack during the day. That way, if you're like, I'm really bored, what do I do? Oh, there's food. You can be like, wait, is it my snack time? No, it's not. So I'm just going to wait until that's over. All right, popcorn's starting to pop. It's very exciting. It's very slow. Sorry, I thought it would be faster. I'll take the phone and show you guys. So it's just kind of slowly popping up here. And again, you don't have to shake the pot for any reason. It's going to take care of itself because we put a little fat in the bottom of the pan. So once this is all done, you just have to watch for it to slow its rate of popping. Once you can count, I always found the trick, if you can count to 10 seconds in between pops, get it off the heat. If the pops just stop altogether, get it off the heat. But everything will kind of pop really rapidly, and then you'll see like one here, one there. When it gets to that, I give it a few of those, and then I just remove it. So everything's popping up pretty nicely. I'm just going. So remember how small a quarter of a cup of corn kernels is? This is a pretty big saucepan, and it's filled most of it up. So again, this is more popcorn than I would eat in a sitting, and I don't really recommend eating this much. I would say like half of this is enough. If you bought store-bought popcorn in like a small single serving, it wouldn't be that much. There it is. That's how much came out of that quarter of a cup. And we even have a few kernels that weren't popped, so yeah, don't go crazy. All right, if you are people who like buttery popcorn, but you're doing non-dairy, I use this stuff. It has a little bit of a flavor, but I don't mind it. I think it kind of works. Butter has a little bit of a flavor too. So I just drizzle a little bit on there. And that's kind of like my fake butter, but in the form of a healthy fat instead. Then a couple of turns with this. We're not going to go crazy with the salt because the nutritional yeast is going to add flavor. And then I go crazy with this stuff because it's my favorite. Have I mentioned that yet? All right. Nutritional yeast just all over there. So I said I don't usually use a quarter of a cup for popcorn. That might be a slight lie. So I'm getting 1,000% of my B12, and I'm just going to stir this up a little bit. What's also nice is the nutritional yeast will turn it slightly yellow. So it's almost like movie theater popcorn where some of it's yellow, some of it's white. It's got good flavor. Tastes like Parmesan. It's good stuff. All right, I'm going to eat this bowl of popcorn as my lunch. But thank you guys again for tuning in. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments. I will be happy to answer them. If you have a favorite non-dairy alternative, leave it in the comments. Tell me what you like. Tell me what I missed. I want to know what the new products are. And if you have a favorite technique, likewise, I want to hear. If you guys would like to donate, I'm taking donations through my Venmo. It is at JSRockRD. It is totally optional. I like to keep this free so that people who can't afford to donate have a resource to learn how to cook and something fun to watch. If you do want to donate, the money literally goes to helping me buy groceries for these demos. That's basically it. But again, thank you for tuning in. Lovely seeing you as always, and I will see you next week.